Well, hello everyone. This is Jack Zemlicka, Managing Editor for Strip Till Farmer, and welcome to the latest episode in our Strip Till Farmer webinar series. Today's event is being brought to you and other registrants free, courtesy of Topcon Agriculture. And in today's program, I'm going to share and evaluate the results of our 2018 Strip Till Operational Practices Benchmark Study, based on the responses of more than 300 farmers from 27 states and Canada, comparing and contrasting fertilization strategies, cover cropping techniques, equipment setups, and technology that strip tillers are putting to work in their operations. Just a couple of notes about some of the other farmer-focused titles we have here with Lessiter Media, and an invitation to join us at the upcoming National Strip Tillage Conference in Iowa City, Iowa on July 26th and 27th. This is our 5th annual event and will feature a mix of general sessions, classroom presentations, and roundtable discussions. So we're looking forward to seeing you out at the event. Well, strip till is often equated to a puzzle, with farmers having to assemble aspects of equipment, fertilizer application, technology, seed selection, and soil health all together. When one piece is missing, others don't often fit. One of the challenges for strip tillers is that the size, shape, and availability of those pieces can change. And perhaps more than any other farming practice, strip till requires a willingness to adapt, experiment, and learn. Today I'm going to look at results of the 5th annual Strip Till Operational Practices Benchmark Study, evaluating 2017 cropping practices that reinforce the value of those idea-sharing opportunities as corn yields, per-farm strip till acre averages, and precision farming technology adoption continue to grow. And we again crunched the numbers on the top 10% of respondents by average corn yield and soybean yields to see what strategies are separating them from the pack. So breaking down study participants by region, not surprisingly, the Midwest and Corn Belt continued their strip till stronghold, with nearly 3/4 of respondents coming from these areas. However, the 74% total was down more than 6 points from last year, highlighted by the lowest total in the history of the study coming from the Eastern Corn Belt. Totals from the Western Corn Belt and Great Lakes were consistent with prior years, and for the 4th year in a row, Illinois led the way with most respondents by state with 58, followed by Iowa, Minnesota, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Wisconsin. What's worth noting is that year-over-year strip till growth in several other regions continued, led by significant spikes in the Plains states. The Northern Plains percentage, which includes the Dakotas, Montana, and Idaho, nearly doubled from 6.8% in 2016 to about 13% last year, while the Southern Plains, including Kansas, Colorado, Oklahoma, and Texas, also increased by nearly 2 points year over year. Talking with Colorado-based soil scientist and agronomist consultant Mike Peterson, he's anticipating continued strip till growth in the coming years, as he's seen a renewed commitment by universities and colleges in educational programs surrounding strip till. He cites states including Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and Kentucky as those ripe for growth. Much has been reported as well about the demographic shifts taking place on North American farms, as the next generation gradually establishes themselves as the farmers of the future. This transition is represented in this year's analysis of the ages and experience levels of strip tillers. While 41% of respondents reported being at least 55 years old, it's the smallest percentage in the history of the study, including an all-time low of about 13% for those strip tillers 65 and over. It's possible that the ag economy has prompted some strip tillers to modify long-term plans for their operation, potentially passing along decision-making power to offspring or younger managers. This could also correlate to an increase in the percentage of strip tillers under 45-year-olds who participated in the study. About 38% of respondents were under 45, the highest total in the history of the study, including a 4-year growth trend, no strip tillers 35 to 44 years old. But the age shift could also represent a new wave of farmers practicing strip till. Some 42% of respondents have been strip tilling less than 5 years, tying the highest total in the history of the study. About 30% say they've been strip tilling more than 10 years, and this ties for lowest historical total. So we'll continue to see if strip tillers trend to skew younger and more inexperienced, or if those numbers will flatten out if the new generation settles into becoming long-term strip tillers. So kind of taking a look at the top 10% from our geographic and age breakdown, Midwestern dominance was reinforced by those top yielding strip tillers, with 77% being from either the Western Corn Belt or the Eastern Corn Belt. Both percentages were consistent with what we saw in last year's study, but 15% of last year's top yielding strip tillers were in the Great Lakes region, with only less than 1% coming from that area this year. Interestingly, while the northern and southern plains saw strip till growth as a whole, less than 1% of those top strip tillers were from those states. Breaking it down to the state level, Illinois led the way with 10 representatives, double the total of the next two states combined, Nebraska and Iowa. Overall, though, 11 different states were represented among the top 10% of strip tillers in the 2018 study. Taking a look at the age breakdown, the majority of the highest yielding strip tillers were under 45 years old, including about 31% in the 35 to 44 age range, more than double the total of last year's study. This represents a dramatic year-over-year shift, with nearly 70% of the highest yielding strip tillers in the 2017 study being at least 45 years old, including about 46% who were 55 or older. Only about 21% of respondents to the 2018 study were 55 or older, and less than 1% were 65 or older. The range of experience for top yielding strip tillers also saw some significant changes, with about 3/4 having strip tilled 10 years or fewer, compared to almost 60% in last year's study. About 42% of the top strip tillers have been strip tilling at least 11 years, including about 10% for more than 20 years in last year's study, compared to just 25% in this year's report. So while strip till tends to be practiced in pockets, there is a sense that interest and adoption are on the rise. And talking with strip till researchers and academics during the last year, the consensus is that strip till is on the upswing. Pinpointing the exact total of strip tilled acres in the U.S. is difficult, but a historical snapshot and recent forecasts reveal strip till momentum. In 2007, our sister publication, No-Till Farmer, reported about 3.6 million acres of corn were actively strip-tilled that year, or roughly 19% of the nation's no-till corn acreage at the time. Based on industry discussions, the best estimate that our strip-till farmer editors have found is that about 8 million acres were being strip-tilled in 2017, and there's a projection of 11.7 million by 2030. Looking at data from the 2018 benchmark study, respondents reported strip tilling a little over 381,000 acres last year, which translates to a per farm average of about 1,200 acres. The average represents an increase of about 174 acres per farm over 2016, and the highest in the history of the study. This includes growth in both the average corn and soybean acres being strip-tilled. Average soybean acres jumped 122 acres, the largest increase in the history of the study, to a high of 552 acres per farm in 2017. This comes after more than a 60-acre drop from 2014 to 15, followed by only modest growth in 2016. Corn acres continue to steadily trend upward, with averages increasing by more than 200 acres per farm since 2013. In 2017, study respondents reported strip tilling an average of 921 acres per farm, and that's up from the 876 reported in 2016. On average, farmers reported strip tilling about 70% of their total acreage in 2017, and that's down about 5 points from 2016. But well ahead of the prior 2 years, which only averaged about 63%. By comparison, results of the 10th annual No-Till operational benchmark study, published by sister publication No-Till Farmer earlier this year, revealed that about 16% of respondents strip-tilled, and that was up slightly from the prior year's total of 15%. It'll be interesting to see if the growth in strip-till acreage continues in the coming years based on the short and long-term forecasts. It's going to be a gradual process, but with increasing public emphasis on nutrient management and fertilizer runoff, researchers are taking notice. Some suggest this will translate to an investment in solutions related to strip-till. Another reason for optimism is that there are areas where strip-till is still in its infancy. Talking with one expert, he cites west of the Missouri and north of the Canadian border as regions ripe for a 3 to 5% annual increase in strip-till adoption in the coming years. Getting into the breakdown of different crops and yields, corn remained king, with more than 96% of respondents strip-tilling this crop in 2017, consistent with the past 4 years, which averaged about 97%. While many farmers reported bumper crops last year, given the growing conditions, strip-tillers enjoyed a particularly productive year. Per bushel corn averages increased by 10 bushels, the largest year-over-year jump in the history of the study, to a high of 209 bushels per acre in 2017. This also marks a 25 bushel increase in average corn yield since 2013. After back-to-back years of 191 bushel per acre averages, 2016 saw respondents average 199 bushels per acre of strip-tilled corn. Drilling down by primary strip-till regions, farmers in the western corn belt average about 224 bushels of corn. That's a 12 bushel bump over 2016, while those in the eastern corn belt averaged about 189, also a bump of about 14 bushels over the prior year. Strip-tillers in the Great Lakes averaged about 207 bushels per acre, about a 9 bushel bump over 2016, while those in the northern plains averaged about 182 bushels per acre, up about 2 bushels over 2016. Consistent with prior years, strip-tilled corn outyielded other tillage systems, as reported by No-Till Farmers' recent benchmark study. In 2017, farmers using minimum tillage practices averaged 189 bushels per acre, those utilizing vertical tillage averaged 187, and no-tillers harvested 181 bushels. The percentage of farmers strip-tilling soybeans dropped slightly, but at 53%, the total is well ahead of the 44% in 2015. After a steady 3-year increase, strip-tilled soybean yields dropped by about 2 bushels per year, from a 2016 average of 62 bushels per acre to 60 in 2017. However, strip-tilled soybeans outyielded no-till soybeans by 5 bushels per acre, based on data from No-Till Farmers' 10th annual benchmark study. This marks the 5th year in a row strip-tillers have seen higher soybean yields compared to no-till, vertical tillage, and minimum till. Looking at the upper echelon of strip-tillers, they also enjoyed measurable yield gains for both strip-tilled corn and soybeans. The average corn yield was 261 bushels per acre, an 11 bushel bump over 2016. The record high average also represented an 18 bushel bump over 2015 and a 25 bushel increase over 2014. Looking at the top 10% of soybean strip-tillers, they enjoyed another yield bump as well, averaging 76 bushels per acre in 2017, a 4 bushel increase over 2016, and a 12 bushel bump over 2014. The average acreage for the top 10% of strip-tillers in 2017 was higher than the rest of the pack, at more than 1,400 acres per farm, and some 74% of the top strip-tillers' total acreage was strip-tilled last year, with farmers averaging 984 acres per farm of strip-tilled corn and about 518 acres per farm of strip-tilled soybeans. Well, flexibility is a luxury strip-tillers often speak of with their system, and the ability to adapt row unit setups to suit field conditions and even shift the timing of strip building to accommodate for Mother Nature's unpredictability can be opportunities rather than obstacles for strip-tillers. This year's benchmark study highlights the annual variances in weather patterns and individual preferences which can influence how and when strip tillers build berms. While the average width of about 8.5 inches and depth of tillage, about 7 inches, has been consistent throughout the history of the study, there are other noteworthy differences. Perhaps the most noteworthy year-over-year change came in the percentage of spring strip tillers, dropping from about 31% in 2016 to a low of 24% last year. This decline followed 2 years of growth in spring strip till, perhaps aided by more conducive conditions in North America during those years. For the third year in a row, the percentage of fall strip tillers grew, with for the first time more than half the respondents choosing the post-harvest window to build berms, and this marks nearly a 7-point increase over 2016 and a 16-point jump over 2015. While the majority prefer fall strip till, only about 14% of respondents said they refresh strips in the spring, although more than 2/3 said they sometimes will refresh strips. These totals are consistent with the last 3 years, but the percentage of farmers refreshing has nearly doubled since 2014. Respondents who strip till in both spring and fall remain largely unchanged, at about 21% compared to 22% in 2016, but these totals were well below the 33% in 2015. While our data revealed a modest shift in strip till timing, there was also change in the size and setup of strip till rigs farmers are running. Those preferring a shank-style system increased nearly 7 points over 2016 to a high of almost 50% last year. The biggest dip came in strip tillers running mole knives, from 38% in 2016 to a low of about 30% last year. Also dropping year over year, though less significantly, was coulter setups, to a low of about 32%. The size of machines farmers pulled through their fields in 2017 remained relatively unchanged compared to the prior year, with some modest changes in smaller sized unit. The percentage of farmers running 6-row strip till rigs fell to an all-time low of about 3%. However, those running 8-row rigs increased by 8 points, to an all-time high of 19% last year. Leading the pack for the 5th consecutive year were those running 12-row rigs, with about 43%, followed by 16-row machines at nearly 30%. Tractor horsepower used to pull strip till rigs continued to creep up to an average of 342 horsepower in 2017, well ahead of 2016. It's worth noting that since the first benchmark study, analyzing the 2013 cropping year, strip tillers have increased tractor horsepower needs by more than 60 in just 5 years. Row unit setups can vary depending on soil types and season, but residue management is a staple for strip tillers. For the second straight year, row cleaners on the planter were the most popular method, with 90% of respondents using them in 2017, up almost 4 points over the prior year. Row cleaners on the strip till rig were also highly popular, utilized by about 73% of strip tillers. Some 32% sized residue with combine attachments, up almost 5 points over 2016, followed by other options including vertical tillage and a biological application. Having visited with a number of strip tillers who pride themselves on tweaking, testing, and then tinkering again with their row unit setups, many are comfortable building off solid from the factory foundation. 2017 again showed significant diversity in brand preferences by respondents, with nearly 20 different manufacturers represented. For the 4th straight year, Kuhn-Krause proved to be the most popular strip till rig run by respondents, at more than 27%, a 10 percentage point increase over 2016. Ranking second for the first time was Environmental Tillage Systems at 13.5%, a 3.5 point increase over 2016, followed by Case IH, which dropped about 5 points compared to 2016. Rounding up the top 5 were Dawn Equipment and Orthman, both at about 10%. So how does the timing and equipment setups of the highest yielding strip tillers compare to the overall group? Fall was the most popular window for strip tilling in 2017, with nearly 60% preferring this time period, outpacing the overall group. The same was true for spring strip till, with about 28% of the highest yielders choosing this window of opportunity compared to the broader group. Only about 16% said they refreshed strips in the spring, and another 20% indicated that they sometimes did. Looking at row unit setups, the biggest gain came in the number of strip tillers using mole knives. At about 34%, down more than 8 points year over year, but still ahead of the 31% in 2015 and 32% in 2014. Use of Coulter setups saw a modest decline among the top yielding strip tillers, from about 30% in 2016 to about 28% last year. Residue management practices were largely consistent with the overall group, with 90% using row cleaners on the planter, followed by about 84% who used row cleaners on the strip till rig, and 43% who sized residue with combine attachments. Exactly half of the top yielding strip tillers ran 12 row units in 2017, slightly higher than the overall group, and another quarter ran 16 row machines, lower than the overall group, while only about 15% ran 8 row machines. While the continuing trend among strip tillers is to use more tractor horsepower to pull their strip till rigs, it's even more pronounced among the top yielders. This group averaged 393 horsepower ahead of their strip till rigs, a record high. Brand preference among the top yielding strip tillers largely followed the overall trend in 2017, with about 1/3 running Kuhn-Krause machines, followed by those running Environmental Tillage Systems machines, Worthman rigs, and Yetter Manufacturing rigs. Overall, 11 different manufacturers were represented among the strip till brands run by the highest yielding strip tillers. Well, as farmers dial into determining where and when to push or scale back on seeding rates, strip tillers have, on average, consistently planted lower populations than no-tillers for both corn and soybeans. 2017 was no different. As results of this year's strip till benchmark study continued the trend. Looking at corn seeding populations preferred by strip tillers, the average increased slightly from just over 33,000 seeds per acre in 2016 to about 33,400 last year. The 2017 average is generally consistent with those from 2015 and 2014. However, the 2017 average is about 2,000 seeds per acre higher than that of no-tillers, as reported in No-Till Farmers' 10th Annual Operational Benchmark Study. While strip-tilled corn seeding rates have been stable during the last 5 years, soybean planting populations have trended downward. Starting at an average of little over 152,000 seeds per acre in 2013, strip-tilled soybean rates fell in both 2014 and 2015 before modestly increasing in 2016. Last year, the average dropped by nearly 4,000 seeds to a low of just over 140,000 seeds per acre. This represents a cumulative decrease of nearly 12,000 seeds per acre in the 5-year history of the study. This year's total was also about 5,000 seeds per acre lower than the average planted by no-tillers in the 2017 season, according to the No-Till Farmer Benchmark Study. There's been more discussion and interest in narrow row or even 60-inch row strip till, and there could also be momentum for twin row strip till. Just under 7% of benchmark study respondents said they twin row strip tilled in 2017, a 5-year study high. While still a small percentage, it will be worth watching to see if some innovative and modified strip till methods emerge in the coming years. Taking a look at cover cropping practices, they continue to be an essential part of many no-tillers farming operations, and recent years have seen growing interest among strip tillers, experimenting and incorporating different mixes and seeding methods to achieve desired results. Adoption had been on a steady incline for the past 3 years, with several varieties gaining popularity. However, there were a few subtle changes in 2017, including, for the first time, a modest decline in cover crop usage among strip tillers. The percentage fell about 5 points from a high of just over 61% in 2016 to about 56% last year, but this total is still well ahead of those from 2015 and 2014. Comparing the data to the no-till benchmark study, no-tillers using cover crops continue to increase to a high of just over 82% in 2017, about a 6-point bump over the prior year. For the fourth year in a row, cereal rye topped the list of the most popular cover crops among strip tillers, with 63% seeding this species. But the 2017 total represented a 7-point drop compared to 2016 and the lowest percentage since 2014. Interestingly, cereal rye increased in popularity among no-tillers last year, with just over 73% raising the crop compared to just over 62% in 2016. The second most popular cover crop among strip tillers also saw the second biggest decline in 2017, with just over 46% seeding radishes in 2017 compared to about 51% in 2016. The biggest gain came in strip tillers raising annual ryegrass, from about 32% in 2016 to just over 38% last year. However, the total is still below the high of 46% in 2014. Other noteworthy declines included fewer strip tillers seeding Austrian winter peas to a low of about 6%, and a 5-point drop in those who raised rapeseed to 23% in 2017. A new species added to the list this year included triticale, which 12% of strip tillers seeded last year. In last year's benchmark study, strip tillers using cover crops were asked for the first time to select their method of seeding, and the majority preferred drilling them in. The same was true in this year's analysis, with just over 44% saying they drilled in their covers in 2017. Use of a drill was also the most popular method for seeding cover crops by no-tillers last year, according to the 10th annual No-Till Farmer Operational Benchmark Study. And the second most popular seeding method among strip tillers was aerial, at about 24%, largely consistent with 2016, followed by spreading seeds at about 18%, which was down about 5 points year over year. Increasing in popularity was interseeding, highboy application, and planter application. A new option added this year was seeding with a strip till bar, and almost 5% chose that method in 2017. Taking a look at the top 10% for seeding and cover cropping, there were some dramatic differences in the strategies being used by the top yielding strip tillers and the overall group. The top 10% were far more aggressive with both their corn and soybean seeding rates, averaging a little over 37,000 seeds per acre for corn, about 5,000 seeds per acre more than the overall group, and just over 144,000 seeds per acre for soybeans, about 4,000 seeds per acre higher than the overall group. A little over 9% of the top yielding strip tillers utilized a twin row system in 2017, slightly ahead of the overall curve, and cover crops were part of about 65% of top strip tillers operations in 2017, about 5 points below this group's 2016 total. And fewer top strip tillers drilled in their cover crops, dropping from about 60% in 2016 to about 57% last year, but this still remained the most popular seeding method. Cereal rye proved to be the most popular species, seeded by the top yielding strip tillers, just over 57%, followed by ryegrass, radishes, oats, and winter wheat. Well, strip tillers often stress the 4R strategy for fertilizer placement, acknowledging that sometimes conditions aren't always conducive to achieving desired results. Being able to adapt and improve a fertility program is a constant evolution, and while it won't eliminate all of the variables that can influence root structure, plant growth, or nutrient uptake, a flexible strategy can at least better manage them. Results of this year's benchmark study continued several fertilizer application timing trends, as well as shifts in the types of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium being applied. The most popular placement of fertilizer applied with the strip till rig was banded below the berm, consistent with prior years. Banding nutrients is cited by many strip tillers as a motivation for adopting the practice. About one-third reported mixing fertilizer into the berm during the strip-till pass, and about 3% applied fertilizer between the berms in 2017, consistent with prior years. The number of strip-tillers using dry fertilizer boxes continued to increase as well, with about two-thirds utilizing a mounted or pull-type system in 2017, compared to about 63% in 2016. It's worth noting that since 2014, usage of dry fertilizer application systems has increased 10%, according to our data. A consistently high percentage of strip tillers owned their own self-propelled or pull-type sprayer in 2017 at just over 87%, compared to about 88% in 2016. This total was higher than about the 76% of no-tillers who own either a self-propelled or pull-type sprayer, according to No-Till Farmers' annual Operational Practices Benchmark Study. Also consistent was the percentage of strip tillers who variable rate applied fertilizer in 2017. Some 41% utilized the technology compared to about 39% in 2016, and this total exceeded the 32% of no-tillers who used variable rate application last year, according to the No-Till Benchmark Study. While looking at application timing across the board, strip tillers remain consistent with the timing of their nitrogen applications in 2017, with no method changing by more than 4 percentage points over 2016. For the fourth year, side dressing nitrogen remained the most popular placement method, with just about two-thirds taking advantage of this method, while at-plant application was the second most popular at just over 47%. A little over one-third applied nitrogen during spring strip till, and about 32% placed their nitrogen while building fall strips. Anhydrous ammonia continued to decline as a form of nitrogen applied by strip tillers to a low of just over 21% in 2017, continuing a dip of nearly 17% since 2014. Farmers continue to debate the cost efficiency versus potential soil health consequences of continuously applying NH3, and it'll be worth watching to see if use continues to decline. Meanwhile, use of urea increased in 2017 to a high of just over 28%, compared to about 24% in 2016. There were more pronounced changes in the timing of P&K applications in 2017 as fewer strip tillers made early spring applications. A low of just over 29% applied P&K during spring strip till, and the same was true for pre-plant applications. For the fourth year, P&K applications and fall strips was the most popular at just under 60%, consistent with 2016. Looking at the most common forms of K applied with the strip till rig, potash continued trending upward for the third year in a row to a high of just over 59%, while those who applied potassium chloride in 2017 increased to just under 10%, also a record high. Application of monoammonium phosphate, or MAP, increased for the fourth consecutive year to an all-time high of just over 40% in 2017. And this is nearly double the percentage reported in 2013. Use of diammonium phosphate, or DAP, fell slightly from 2017 to 32%, but has largely remained a consistently popular source of P. Evaluating micronutrient applications with the strip till rig, several saw measurable changes in 2017, with the biggest one being a 9-point decline in the use of sulfur from a high of just over 40% in 2016 to a low of just over 31% last year. Application of zinc also declined from about 31% in 2016 to a low of 27% last year, while 3 new fertilizer sources were added to this year's study, including manure, microessentials, SZ or MES, and lime. Taking a look at the top 10%, banding fertilizer beneath the berm remained the most common application method among this group, utilized by about 67%, while 28% mixed fertilizer into the berm. This group also spreads out its nitrogen applications, including 56% who applied nitrogen at plant in 2017, 50% who side dressed, 43% who applied in spring strips, and 37% fall strips. Some 28% applied anhydrous, which is an increase over 2016 but still below 2015, and about one-half the number of 2014, which was about 62%. For P&K applications, about 60% did so in fall strips, an increase of nearly 15% since 2015. Unlike the larger group, the top-yielding strip tillers remained consistent with early season placement of P&K. Just over one-third applied P&K in spring strips in 2017, close to the 32% total in 2016, while another 34% applied at plant, also consistent with prior years. The most popular sources of P for this group was potash and MAP, both utilized by just over 46%. The totals represented a year-over-year decrease for potash and an increase in MAP. Half of the top yielding strip tillers used dry fertilizer systems in 2017, lower than the overall group, while about 78% own their own sprayer, about 9 points lower than the overall group. And some 38% said they used variable rate application in 2017, more consistent with the overall total. Finally, taking a look here at some of the precision practices adopted by strip tillers. Accuracy is an essential part of a strip till system for berm building, fertilizer application, and planting. Strip tillers often speak of the consequences of seeding plants off the strip and the negative impact that can have on corn yields. The increasing emphasis on precision farming practices continued to bear out in 2017, with a record high of just over 86% who used RTK level correction GPS in their strip till system. This marks a gradual 4-year increase of nearly 7 points, coinciding with a decline in strip tillers relying on WAS, GLONASS, or no GPS correction signal at all. On the rise also was use of unmanned aerial vehicles as a technology tool, from about 22% in 2016 to just over 24% last year. This will continue to be a technology worth watching as aerial imagery becomes more valuable as an in-crop analytical tool to identify nutrient deficiencies. Slightly fewer strip tillers used implement guidance in 2017 compared to 2016, but the totals are still well ahead of the 17% in 2015 and 19% in 2014. Looking at the top 10%, use of RTK was even more predominant among this group, with 96.8% utilizing the GPS correction level in 2017. And 1/4 of the top strip tillers ran implement guidance last year, down from a high of about 37% in 2016, but still ahead of the 2015 total. And use of UAVs by the top strip tillers was consistent with the overall group, as about 25% took flight with technology last year. So finally, taking a look here at some of the things strip tillers are looking forward to in the coming year. We asked strip tillers as part of the benchmark study to identify some of the things they see as assets in their system, whether far-fetched or realistic innovations. A couple of the ones that came to mind this year were multi-product application for micros or secondary nutrients, more 22-inch row strip till machines, real-time nitrogen management using nitrate sensors, benchmarking nitrates and tissue sampling, a seed firmer that reads organic matter and other things to variable rate populations on the fly, being able to spray a burn down while strip tilling at 6 miles per hour, and an affordable way to put seed cover crops while side dressing. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today and sitting in to hear some analysis and breakdown of our 2018 strip till benchmark study. And also, a thank you again to Topcon Agriculture for supporting this webinar series. Please stay tuned for future announcements and updates on upcoming webinars in this series, and thanks for listening.